Hello and welcome to the Meaning Academy podcast. I am Dr. Daniel A. Franz, Dr. Dan, with my good friend, Dr. Baruch B. Halevi, representing part of the Meaning Academy and our desire to continue to bring the great messages of Dr. Viktor Frankl, logotherapy, and meaning, purpose, and resilience to all of you out there who have been enjoying it and learning from it and growing from it. B, how you been, man?
Hey, buddy. Good to be back in action with you. I feel like we missed a couple weeks, a lot of moving parts, a lot of traveling for me. It's been a lot of getting kids settled in college, which I think is some of what you've been up to as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It just hit me one of the reasons why we didn't get together last week. Not only the positives, the bittersweetness of moving kids to college. We both had that last week, but also what I am starting to think of is not just the summer from hell, but the summer from hail, because the uh, the storm. I was going to use a different word with storm, but we'll just call it the storm that started in probably it was late March of this year. Destroyed the hood of my vehicle. I drive a Jeep, so at least I had a hard top on. Didn't do that, but just ripped through the hood of my Jeep and then my house roof, which is kind of a blessing in disguise. We knew we needed a new roof, but hail damaged roof. Well, the ironic thing is because the hail damage up there is the reason why the sign behind me and everything here in the Dr. Dan studios had to change because over there in the old corner, because of the roof, that gets wet. It floods here every time it rains, and part of the summer from hail. But my personal journey from the summer from hail started, about the same time. Be just something as simple as goofing with the dog late one night after a rainy day, having a great time with the puppy Daisy. And I went one way, my knee went another one. And I heard one of those sounds you hear sometimes in like a football game or a soccer game where people really end up screaming at the end of that sound. I'm like, man, that's smarts. And so I've been dealing with that all summer long, trying to get better. And here's the funny thing, like just bits and pieces of doctor's visits and physicians. The other day, after dropping my daughter off from at school, well, let's go back before that. The day you and I were supposed to record a podcast, I was supposed to host our meaning mastermind last Thursday. Was really excited. Spent a lot of time preparing for it. I was sitting on a client call wrapping it up. It is. I'll never forget the time. It was 10:55 a.m. A storm again. The summer from hail. Just a storm rolling in. Nothing big, but my internet connection's not doing well. And so I look over. I'm standing up in the area where all my internet is upstairs, just trying to get a good signal. And I'm looking at the router, and it's going blue, red, blue, red. That's not a good sign. I mean, what else happens when lights go blue red? Usually you have an officer behind you or something. We don't want to see red and blue lights flashing. It's never a good thing. And so I'm looking at this router, and from out of nowhere comes, the loudest boom I think I've ever heard in my entire life. And lights are just explosion light. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm dead. It's over. I have no more worries. My suffering is gone. I think I've died. And then I recognize the poor individual on the other side of my headset's going, are you okay? And what did you mean by those words? That doesn't sound very therapeutic. So I'm in the middle of apologizing, but also realizing my house, my internet tower, had been hit by lightning, blew up the ground around it, traveled underneath my house, back around to the router I was looking at, and blew it up in my living room as I was staring at it.
My favorite picture you sent me was the ground charred between the tower and your house. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, there was a trench that the line went through, and the lightning actually blew the line out of the trench. There was internet line hanging from the trees around me. So my first thought before calling you, my friend, was, oh my goodness, is my daughter okay upstairs? I race upstairs, check on her. she's good. And then I start to do damage control and literally picking up shrapnel, plastic pieces, power surge protector all over the place. And then I think, honestly, second thought, everybody's safe, good. Oh my God, I got to get a hold of B. I'm supposed to host the meeting mastermind. This is important stuff, and I can't.
Well, maybe that's a good segue into what we were considering talking about, which is when we experience not just, one suffering, but sufferings, it starts compounding, it starts feeling overwhelming. Everybody listening has had their variation and versions of this. When it rains, it pours. When it hails, it, lightnings, and things blow up and feels like can't deal with it. What do we do? Right. And so our conversation today is sometimes it's not about fixing it. It's not about coming up with a remedy. It's not about me giving you solutions. It's just about creating a space to get it out, to process it, to hold the suffering.
Kind of like what you and the audience just allowed me to do right there is run through that list of frustrations. And it's interesting in my office, whether it's in a clinical setting, working with people truly suffering and saddened, or even in a business setting, working with businesses struggling with different degrees of negative variables approaching them, it very often is some of the greatest healing, some of the greatest change comes from simply listening. Um, you and I know in our field of logotherapy, the great Dr. Viktor Frankl logotherapy believes, we all believe, that the solution to our problems rests within us already, right? It is part of who we are. It is part of the noetic. It's part of our defiant human spirit. And we get to use, as you and I are trained in, the great art of Socratic dialogue, or what we call maieutic questioning, to help people uncover that, to just listen, to be present, and to help them to discover the solution that's already there within them.
It's a paradigm shift. And I also think it's not how I'm wired, particularly as a man. I get told this by Ariel all the time. Whenever she wants to share something that is her particular suffering, and I start going into my fix it mode, right? I become like, was that Wreck It Ralph? Did you ever see that TV? That movie?
Absolutely.
Fix it, feel it, fix it, Felix, fix it, or something like that. And I go into that mode where she stops me and says, like, I don't want you to fix it. You can't fix it, but you could listen to it. Like, you could do a better job of listening to it. So as much as I'm trained in it, we all preach what we most need to learn. And I forget that there's no solution that I'll ever give anybody. Like you said, it's about you discovering your solution, your path through your suffering. Doesn't mean we're powerless, doesn't mean we don't have a job to do, and that is to hold the space so that somebody can process.
Absolutely. And I want to point that out, especially to all you men out there listening, and women who have men that should hear this. Hear B's example, because in my years in clinical and counseling practice, that is definitely something I've had to instruct many men on. And I like to joke. I really didn't get it initially in life. I had to go to school for 2 extra years just to figure it out. Um, our partners, our wives, our loved ones, our daughters, our mothers don't need our brilliance, our wisdom, our ability to fix everything and anything as men. Sometimes they just need us to hear them, to recognize that they already have a solution. In some ways, guys, it can be kind of condescending when we look at our wives or our daughters or our mother and we say, well, what you should have done was ABC. They don't need that. They just need
Now,
us to listen.
I would argue it is, like this is thousands of years of wiring, but it's also cultural because our culture now more than ever. So whether you're a man or a woman, we're living in a fix it culture,
Mm.
right? Where there must be a book. So I wrote a book on surviving loss, grief. I never show up to a wake or a Shiva home or a funeral with this book in hand, because at that time there's nothing to do other than just to be in it. There comes a time when now solutions or directions or insights and advice has its place, but it's got to happen in time, and we're just so uncomfortable in this fix it Felix culture, to sit with things and just allow time to take some of its course.
I'm gonna alter fix it Felix to fix it Pfizer,
Hmm.
um, or fix it Bear, or fix it Eli Lilly. Um, they've done a great job marketing to us that however we feel, whatever we're experiencing, they have a pill to take care of it. On the other hand, if we can embrace this suffering and grow from it and learn from it and hold space for it, we become better. Medication numbs it out, makes us feel better. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are times when medication is highly recommended, but it isn't all the time. We don't always need to numb it out and just feel better. Sometimes we have to endure the difficulty and get through it. And it's funny. So we were enduring. B, I tell you what, man, it was like, I know what the pioneers' lives were like this weekend. I lived without internet.
Oh my God.
I know, for 3 days, brother. It was crazy. Like, and it's not just no internet, but like that means no TV, no Netflix, no Disney Plus, no Amazon. We had to talk to each other, B. And then
I feel bad for your wife.
you should. All of you out on the podcast, you get this wisdom all the time. Imagine living with it day in and day out. But here's the funny. This is what really got to both of us and really brought us closer together. So we take our daughter to college on Saturday and had some friends. Another therapist and his daughter came and just let our dogs out. I'm like, hey, come by for a couple hours, let them out. And they're like, no problem. That way, that allowed us to spend as much time as we needed to getting her settled into college. And they did, and we get back, and my poor old dog, he's 15-year-old Barley, right? If you look on social media, he's all over my social media. Um, well, he had a bit of an upset tummy. Apparently, our friends allowed him to eat from the pear tree of good and evil. We have a pear tree in the backyard, and that boy must have sat out there for 3 hours eating pears, rotten pears, ripe pears, not ripe pears, because he painted the house brown for 3 days every
It's been a
2 to 3 hours.
rough run for you, buddy.
It has been, but the funny thing was, and this was probably about I'm guessing 2:33 a.m. Tuesday morning. Michelle's out there helping me clean up this mess and taking care of the dog, and I just start laughing uncontrollably, cackling. It was horrible. Like I was horrified at the sound coming out of my own body. I'm like, why am I laughing so much? And she looks at me and got a little kind of the sideway, like, you're not going to make it, are you? And as I'm giggling, I said, I can't believe my knee feels so much better. Because I heard a noise in the kitchen. I jump up to take care of the dog, run outside. I'm like, thank goodness I feel so much better. You'd be here all by yourself cleaning up this mess. So in a way, it was finding a blessing in all that difficulty. As I said, we were up every 2 or 3 hours for a couple days, sleep. It was kind of like having a baby again, which reminded us why we're so happy to be empty nesters at this point.
So I think we're in that space of there's just no substitute for just being in it. Like sometimes you just have to go through it, and there's just no way around it.
Mhm.
And we're not used to that in our culture where there's always a quick fix. There's always a solution. Like order something off of Amazon to make it all better, make it go away. If you order it now, it was amazing to me. My kid wanted some AirPods or whatever for school, and I ordered them and they were here like within 3 hours.
Yeah.
I was like blown away. Like I ordered it and voila, it was almost like poof. And but now it's becoming less and less of a miracle that happens and almost an expectation. And therefore my time frame is amping up. And if it doesn't come till tomorrow, that's a long time. So we're like in this place and space of make it happen now. And if it can't happen now with a quick fix, I don't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of our challenge today is can we learn how to be in suffering, sit in suffering, and just kind of work through the pairs?
Well done. Oh, you got me there. Work through the pears. Uh, there's a lot of pears
In
to
all
work
of their glory.
and all their digest. Anyway, yeah, a couple thoughts. You just totally derailed me, bud. That was great. I can't get those
Yes.
pears out of my mind.
One for
Um,
B. One for B.
I remember this used to drive me nuts as a kid. My mother would always say, "Well, patience is a virtue." I'm like, "What the hell does that mean? I don't even know what a virtue is, but I know I don't like patience. I don't like waiting." And you've heard me say this many times. There's good research out there that the Industrial Revolution has caused the world life to speed up at incremental paces, right? That we can feel it. Eh, But when we step back to allow that space between stimulus and response, when we teach ourselves patience, when we allow ourselves to take a breath and wait, we cultivate this sense of I don't know, it's almost a heroic virtue in that, yeah, I don't need that immediately. I mean, when we run around life just day to day, having to chase things down and it was fun. Like Amazon was at my house at 7:30 this morning. I have no idea why. I haven't even looked to see what it was, but I'm like, why are you here? And why do we live in a culture that tells us, we need to have these things within, as you said, just within hours? I would offer it may not be healthy for us.
So let's unpack that word because your mother's a sage. Patience is a virtue, but patience. I love playing with words, and the word patience comes from Latin pati, which means suffering, right? So by definition, suffering is about waiting. There's a great book by Sue Monk Kidd, who wrote many famous books, but one of them is called something like The Waiting Heart. And it's all about the second half of life, cultivating the ability to just be patient, to just sit, to allow think time to work her magic. Patience.
And that patience, if I remember correctly, wisdom, justice, patience, courage, no, temperance, courage, wisdom, justice, temperance, courage, the four great stoic virtues. Patience is in there in kind of each one of those. This goes back to all kinds of philosophies over the past thousands of years. But again, in the past few hundred years, we have this drive to make everything happen faster. And I don't think it is sustainable. I think that is part of the reason why we don't know how to suffer anymore. We don't know how to help people suffering because, as you said, we feel like things we should be over or past or done with these things within, well, hours. Apparently, that's what Amazon teaches us. And I know you and I both deal with people that come to us saying, well, shouldn't I be over this grief? Shouldn't I be over this suffering? People keep telling me to get past it and get over it. And what have we been saying a lot lately? There is no way, the only way through it is through it. You have to endure it and experience it and allow it to change you.
And once you understand, like a friend going through suffering, you're not there to fix it. You're not there to do anything other than patience, to hold the suffering. That's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I shared with you this quote by Henry Nouwen, who's a well known Christian theologian. When we honestly ask ourselves which person in our lives means the most to us, we often find that it is those who, instead of giving advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a warm and tender hand. And like that is what a friend, that is what a spouse, that is what a child, whomever is really asking from us. All they could possibly ask from us is to just be present with us and sit in it with us. And that is a gift. And when people start realizing this, it makes it a lot less scary to show up at somebody's bedside or
Mm-hmm.
somebody's, again, wake, to be with them and their family during that time, because there's nothing you need to do. In fact, the more you do, usually the worse it gets. So
Mm-hmm.
don't do anything and just know that, showing up is the gift.
Yeah. So this is where I give away the secrets of psychotherapy, right? We were talking about this earlier. We don't want to give away the secret sauce, but here's the secret sauce. That's often a large portion of what we do as logotherapists and psychotherapists. Just being present. Not enough of us know how to be present and to truly listen and to witness to somebody's suffering, whether it's at their deathbed or whether it's somebody else's that they're grieving or a loss or a difficulty. As you said, so often we hear in our times, sometimes it's about showing up, being present. And that can be freeing. You don't have to have the answers. My goodness, you and I have studied the answers for, I don't know, 50 years between the two of us. We don't always have the answers. Sometimes the answer is, I can be here for you and just be witness to your suffering.
So many people miss like they unconsciously or consciously avoid a friend who's going through suffering, a
Mm.
divorce or loss of a loved one because they don't know what to say. And so they spend their life running from the opportunity. The opportunity is just like just people appreciate this. I mean, having done hundreds of funerals, I can tell you, people just appreciate when you just show up. You
Mhm.
don't have to bring flowers. Don't bring flowers. In fact, you don't have to bring anything. You don't have to do anything. Just show up. It's so freaking simple, but it's terrifying.
Why is it? Why do you think it's so terrifying?
Back to our culture. It's like I'm
Mm.
supposed to have answers. I'm supposed to do something. I'm supposed, it's like we have not been taught the art of just being present. It is not part of our culture. We don't do presents. We do presents. We don't do presents, and it's almost to the point where it's seen as like weak. Right? What do you mean you showed up empty-handed? What do you
Mm.
mean you didn't do something, volunteer something, right? No, like just being present is enough. I think partially in my work at the Enneagram comes down to everybody's dealing with their not enoughness in different ways. We all feel like we're not enough. So we go through our Enneagram type to try and be enough, but you are enough. Like how much of that is our message to people on the journey? You are enough, and we don't
Mhm.
believe it.
I think I can reflect back on some of my work this week and really, remember some people who feel like they have to be everything to everyone. And that is often where not enough comes from. I have to make all of these people happy. I mean, I have to make all of these people whole. I have to have the answers for all of them. And the real answer is no, you don't. Be you, be authentic, be present, be just be there.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me early in my days as a rabbi when I would get challenged theologically. Why do bad things happen to good people? I just lost my daughter. Tell me, Rabbi, why this happened? I used to try and like be God's spokesman. Like what arrogance. And finally I got to this place where it's like, I don't know. I'm just a schmuck just like you trying to live their life and figure it out. But I can just be here and I can
Mhm.
let you shout at me and I can absorb that as an act of compassion so that you can work through your suffering. And if that's what you need right now, then I'll absorb that and I'll hold that. I won't take it on, but I'll hold it for you so you can work through your pain.
Let's talk on that really quick because I think that's something unique to both of our trainings. I will not take that on. We can't help but be impacted by the people's lives we touch. And as any human trying to help another person, just to bear witness, to be with them, you can't help but be touched by. But as you said, that doesn't mean you have to take it on. You don't have to be in. There's a therapist I work with that says, I won't go down in that hole with you, but I'll hold the light and be ready to help pick you back up. Right? We can't always go in. We can go into the depths, but we can't carry those depths with us throughout our lives and our days as well. So that's always an important one. When you're going to be with somebody, when you're going to bear witness, when you're going to try to help somebody, it doesn't mean you have to take it on and carry the burden all the time for them. It's a difficult balance to have as a professional, but equally as a layperson just trying to be helpful to another human being.
Yeah, and I think that helps people going into other people's suffering that you might get yelled at, you might get blamed, you might get it's not doesn't mean it's yours. You don't have to own it.
Hmm.
You can allow, it's the Buddha who's attacked by some passerby yelling at him with anger and the Buddha says, if I were to give you a gift, young man, and you didn't accept it, to whom does the gift belong? And the man says, if you give me a gift and I don't accept it, it's yours. And he says, that's how I feel about your anger. Like, you're welcome to be angry. You're welcome to scream and shout. I don't accept it. I'll hold the space so you can work through it. I'm the Buddha in this situation, and but I'm not going to take it on as mine. It's yours, and as an act of love, I'll let you work through it. Now, it doesn't mean, anybody listening, that you have to endure abuse, right? It doesn't mean that you have to allow people to walk on you. But I do think of my job sometimes as the cosmic garbage collector, of holding out the garbage can and just letting people, dump into the garbage can. And when they're all done, like tying the garbage bag up and throwing it in the heap.
That's an interesting point. In a less metaphoric sense, what do you really do when you feel that trash can of what you've taken from people? What do you do to tie up that bag and give yourself some relief and to discard maybe some of the negative emotions that have been thrown your way?
So this is totally random, but it's funny. So I just went to the grocery store to buy garbage bags, and my 12-year-old was with me. And we got to there's now like 50 types of garbage bags, right? Like everything else. And there was one that's scented. And my son looks at me and goes, "Who the hell wants good smelling garbage?" And it was just this moment of, that's so true. Like there's a reason why shit smells like it does. Wayne Dyer says, so we'll get rid of it. Right. So you
Well,
don't keep
and let me tell you, I mean, digested pears really smell that way pretty pretty poorly.
put them in any kind of garbage bag you want, but if it has perfume, what are you masking? Like, get rid of it.
There's nothing like the scent of lavender and dog diarrhea in the same compartments. That's
So,
so
but his point
true.
is so well taken, and it's to your question of what do you do with it? You bury it,
Yeah.
right? You put it in a landfill. You get it out of your house.
Sure. Well, and I was looking for more practical. But it's ironic you brought it up. Dang it, I forgot I had to order new trash bags from Amazon. If I did it in 5 minutes, I could be here yesterday. So I'll worry
But
about that later.
But yeah, but that's to your point, though. It's like the point about scented garbage bags. Like, what, you going to keep it around long enough that you need to scent it, or are you going to dispose of it properly? And you're asking me for practical solutions, and that's true. We need proper ways to dispose of this.
Hmm.
So let's talk about some strategies, some practical tools of how you tie up the garbage bag when people have left it on your doorstep.
Sure. Well, first I have to point out. I mean, I love this paradise you live in, where people recognize the trash is full and tie it up and throw it away. Obviously, nobody in your family plays trash can Jenga, where they work to stack to the highest tower before tying it. Before Dad goes, "Son of a, come on!" But again, now within the past 5 days being empty nesters, there's only two people to blame here, so nobody else gets to play trash can Jenga. Um, how do we tie up? We find humor, right? We do.
That's right.
Uh, People that deal in death regularly, morticians, physicians, nurses. My brother was an EMT for a while. The sense of gallows humor that they develop would be mostly inappropriate for any of us outside of that profession. But they have to find humor in it. And you and I and what we deal with have to find humor, again, laughing at the fact that I'm cleaning up piles of, and my knee feels good, right? You got to find humor in the difficulties, or, and that's what Dr. Frankl teaches us. Humor is one of the greatest tools of the defiant human spirit.
So humor is it's he calls it a weapon of the soul. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
just a defense mechanism, although I tend to use it as such. It's also a survival tactic, right? And a way to fend off despair. So that is a great way to tie off the trash can bag of poking fun, making fun, joking.
Mhm.
Now, again, everything in its right time and its right place. That's a great tactic. Here's another one is I just blanked on it. Ritual. I
Mm.
watch my wife is a healer, and she's got some really weird rituals, I must admit, but I'll see her walking around after a client like with sage,
Mhm.
and like doing like this thing around her body and cutting off like all the cords, whatever it is. But for her, that's a meaningful ritual. For me, I have a space that I meet clients, so I don't meet just anywhere. We have a designated space, and that's my space where I
Mhm.
do my work that's contained, and like that's known as my space. And I can create some boundaries and borders through that ritual of when I'm in that space, I'm doing this. And when I leave that space, I let it go.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think also is if we go to the other side of the spectrum away from humor, or maybe not away, just different from humor, is spirituality. Recognizing there are forces out there that the human mind can't fully understand, and sometimes that means we can't fully understand suffering, but there is something out there, a greater cause, a greater purpose, a God, whatever you might want to call it. There are things out there that we don't understand that impact us, and that's okay.
Another way that I tie off the garbage bag, so that I can come back and do it again and again, hold people suffering and not making it my own, is realizing that it's not personal. That's why I like the Enneagram. I know you use Myers-Briggs, where sometimes I'll explain it as, it's not the person doing it, it's their Enneagram type.
Hmm.
So an 8 is doing this, and it's coming from a place of anger, and it's not about me. They're, 8s tend to need to work through their anger. Enneagram 2s need to work through their pride, their neediness, whatever it is. I can start depersonalizing it. That's just my way. People listening will have their way to not make it so personal.
Hmm. Another tool of logotherapy, right out of logotherapy in a nutshell, the second half of Man's Search for Meaning that nobody reads, depersonalization. As the world's worst psychologist and philosopher is known to say, it's not about you. That's my worst Dr. Phil McGraw impersonation ever. I'm sorry, but I find him and his teachings quite despicable. But that idea that it's not about you is very true. It's an important one. It's depersonalization. It's stepping back and recognizing, as the Buddha says, this is your anger to bear. I can be there to bear witness to it, but I can't take it on.
There's a teaching, I forget where it is. I think it was in the Talmud, about a rabbi who couldn't take any more of the world's most annoying congregant, and basically kicks him out of the synagogue. Like, this guy's just a schmuck. So he kicks him out, and then he, dies, meets his maker, and God says, there's only one thing that I'm really upset with you about, is you couldn't handle Mr. Cohen for a couple days, couple years. I dealt with Mr. Cohen his entire life. I put up with him as God for 51 years. You couldn't put up with this guy for a day or two or a year. And I think about that, like, can I just bear the burden of this person?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they're having a really bad week or day or year or life. And as an act of service, cosmic service, can I hold that space for this person a little bit longer?
Yeah. Let me, that's a good segue into the second half of that quote you shared, right? Um, the friend who can be silent with us in a moment of despair or confusion, who can stay with us in an hour of grief and bereavement, who can tolerate not knowing, not curing, not healing, and face with us the reality of our powerlessness. That is a friend who cares. Wow. I mean, how powerful is that relationship to have somebody that says, you know what? I'm just here with you. Most of my friends that are that close to me know to give me a call anytime. Say, you know what, Dan, I need some barn time. And that means we go out to the barn here at the Dr. Dan farm, and I just sit and they talk, and maybe we enjoy a drink or a cigar. But it's just a place to kind of unleash. And look, some of these problems, there are no solutions, difficulties in families and in-laws and illnesses, but the ability to listen. And I have those people too. Thank you, B, for being one of those people for me. We all have to have those people in our lives.
We do. I draw from the Catholic tradition on this, the power of confession. I
Mm,
really do think it's a human need to just confess whatever that means to you, and to have a person, or I'm a part of I started a men's group called Men's Search for Meaning, and watching these guys show up and just have a place to confess. Not, like, the job isn't afterwards. I don't say, say, like, 7 Hail Marys and the Shema Yisrael. Like, I don't give them like prescriptive things afterwards. We just hold the space. And I kind of think of myself sometimes as a priest in that way, just so they can just offload their burdens into a space for other people to bear witness to. And it's hard to explain, but it feels like we're just doing a duty or a service to the person just by allowing them to do that. The barn.
The barn, the confessional. I think that's one of the things we often hear about the Catholic confessional. So many people are afraid of it, afraid of taking inventory of their sins, of their issues, and kneeling down and saying, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 4 months since my last confession, and here's the list of all the horrible things I've done and why I'm a terrible person." But you're right. There's some goodness. It's scary to come to that, to recognize our flaws. In the 12-step literature, it's called a moral inventory, and it can be a very powerful thing. Sometimes we can just do that at the end of the day. Where did I fail myself, my family, my God, my spirits, whatever it might be? Where did I fail, and what do I want to do better again tomorrow? Sometimes it's helpful to have somebody else look at you and say, well, maybe there's a couple things you could do differently, but in the end, man, you're a human, you're flawed, you're broken, and all you can do is keep trying day in and day out.
And you hear secular people almost in this day and age poking fun of the confessional idea, like, oh, what, now it's all better and now you're forgiven. It's it's much deeper than that. It's the human need to give voice to that monster that's in all of us, and different monsters at different times, different darkness, and to be able to not only say it, but to have another human being with the capacity to receive it, to hold it, and
Mhm.
to bear witness to it and not turn you away as if you're a monster, right? Because
Yeah.
we're all dealing with that darkness. And to have another person or a group or a professional create that space, hold it, and so that we can not only get it out, but also still be received. That's a profound and powerful process.
Yeah, as a part-time devout Catholic, part-time questioning Catholic, I can tell you, yeah, you go into that room with another person and spill your guts, and they say, "Hey, you're human. It's okay. Go think about these things." Yeah,
More
it
than that,
does.
you're
Like,
loved. You're
it
loved.
does get all better.
Right? You're loved. Christ loves you, and
Yeah,
that from that paradigm, it's not mine.
yeah,
And like that, whoa, like, wow,
yeah.
you're still loved, not in spite of it, because of it. Like that's a paradigm shift.
One of the most beautiful things I've heard in that room in recent history was, you know, if you're not battling your failings on, every day, well, then you're just succumbing to them. It's like, wow. If you're not recognizing your own struggles on a regular basis, well, you're just giving into them. That's that idea of that if you're not moving forward in life, you're moving backward.
And so it's about, I mean, I guess we wrap it up here, but um, it's about creating a space, as what's his name? The psychologist called it positive, unconditional regard.
Carl Rogers,
Carl Rogers.
unconditional positive regard,
Unconditional
UCR.
positive, right?
Mhm.
Unconditional positive regard. I'm going to hold a space for you where literally there is no judgment. There's nothing you're going to say that's going to disgust me, cause me to walk away. I will create this unconditional space for you to bear your burdens and tell you in 1,000 different ways. And you're loved not in spite of your wounds, your shatterings, your brokenness, because of it. Like that is the ultimate gift.
Beautifully stated. And that's what we can do as we started. And as the quote you shared says, that's what we can do for each other. You don't have to be a logotherapist or a therapist to do that. Sometimes just being present and bearing witness to each other's difficulties, sufferings, sins, grief, loss can be very powerful. You don't always have to have the answer. So hey, let's this is the Meaning Academy podcast. You can find out more about the Meaning Academy at themeaningacademy.com. Check this out. As of yesterday, we were taking a pause from our meaning masterminds at 3 o'clock Eastern on Thursdays. But a group of meaning seekers said, you know what, we're going to continue to hold this space for each other as you, Dr. Dan, and Dr. B, and Dr. Elise go into the tower of logotherapy to consult with the great logotherapists throughout time to design the curriculum and to really find out where the Meaning Academy goes. We're taking a bit of a break. We're creating capacity so we can do more for the Meaning Academy. Uh, a group of meaning seekers said, we're going to keep doing this. So if you are interested, hop on themeaningacademy.com, sign up for our weekly newsletter, and just get a reminder and a link for us to let you know Thursdays, 3 p.m. Still going to have the Meaning Masterminds. Different people will be there. B and I may pop in from time to time, but we will not be facilitating, as we said, maybe as much as we used to. And there's a lot more coming out from the Meaning Academy here, hopefully in the near future.
Amen, brother. This is a good one. Thank you. And thanks for having the courage to begin this conversation by sharing some of the sufferings of your heart. And, go get out there, read Man's Search for Meaning. Anybody listening as a pathway to healing the broken heart and moving forward and holding that space for others. So until the next time, I just blanked on our sign
Live
off.
your life with meaning, purpose, and resilience.
Amen. Talk to you soon.
Take care.